My name is Mike Abundo. You can call me Mike for short. I am originally from the Philippines in a city called Davao, which is in the southern part of the country. I have always been a water baby, they call it, a person who likes the sea. I grew up near the water and would spend almost every day of my summer childhood going to sea. That being said, fast forward to my university days, I was always a person that leaned towards science and technology. I love numbers. I like physics a lot, and I had a more interest and I guess aptitude towards engineering like courses rather than the biology type courses. I think that was mainly because I didn't like memorization. So I went into a little bit of logic and that kind of ability to start with simple things and build up through the use of logic made me fall in love with engineering. So I took a course in electronics and communications engineering, delved into a little bit of biomedical engineering applications in the University of the Philippines, went to do my master's in the same university while being a teaching associate, focused on instrumentation and control, using things like brain-machine interfaces. That's probably not what I'm doing at the moment. But then an opportunity came to go into deeper research, and the Department of Science and Technology of the Philippines offered scholarships for graduate degrees for students who wanted to go full-time. So in 2008, I decided to take a little bit of a leap of faith and focus on doing a research that could help the country. That was very much my thinking. If I were to do some R&D, some research and development, then maybe I should do something impactful for the future. And I had three choices. I was pretty okay with embedded systems and data acquisition and telemetry, those types of things, microcontrollers, you know. So I figured that might be a strong area where I could contribute. Then another option was to look at biomedical sensors, biomedical research, which I thought was pretty cool with the advent of humans using different types of detection techniques for different types of diseases. And I come from a family of should we say, medical doctors. My parents are both medical doctors. My dad's a neurosurgeon, my mom's a general practitioner, and my brothers, all three of them, are actually all medical doctors. So I'm the odd one out that went into a non-medical field. That aside, so biomedical engineering was one of the areas. And then the last one I thought would be maybe there was something a little bit closer to my interests. And I got involved with a lot of ocean-based data acquisition systems for marine scientists, and they were always using a lot of our instrumentation systems because they needed something which was low cost or cost effective or easy to deploy, a bit more suitable design for, let's say, remote deployment. And being an instrumentation and control engineer, that was our background to sort of give different solutions for them. So I got exposed back to the thing that I love, which was the sea. And that gave me thinking, you know what? You really need to power a lot of these modules. And that was one of their main points, that they couldn't really replace batteries all the time using divers, etc. So could we harness some energy underwater or using marine resources to remove the battery swapping, requirement for very far-flung areas, which would have been expensive. So that got me into a little bit of marine renewable energy, and thinking broadly, the Philippines Department of Energy did need some technical capabilities around marine renewable energy. And that opened up, should we say, not a can of worms, but I would say a box of possibilities. And for me, that has been the journey ever since, I, being quote unquote a geeky person who loves science, technology, engineering, maths, the STEM line of things, I was very curious ever since I was young, but I was also, I would say, a little more resourceful than my other colleagues because and driven. So I would love to basically build stuff, not just Legos, but interface different things, whether it be from toys plus sports equipment, and then maybe integrate it with something functional, kitchen stuff at home that your mom wished that an appliance would exist or something like that. So I think having that mindset of being able to bring together different expertise, and now with the application towards either embedded systems or biomedical or ocean renewable energy, I kind of lean towards applying my skill sets to the renewable energy space, the sustainability space, just because I thought that maybe in my lifetime there would be something that I'm able to contribute, even if it's a little bit, and that would have been impactful for a country like the Philippines, and maybe impactful also for this part of the world, Southeast Asia. During the course of my PhD studies, I was lucky enough to have what's called a sandwich program between the University of the Philippines and Nanyang Technological University. So I was already very much ahead in terms of the research work I was doing for ocean renewable energy, very specifically to look at suitability analytics for different types of data that would lead to more successful decision making in projects that involve ocean renewable energy. So you had information about devices, the technologies that were out there that could harness different types of renewable energy, whether they be from tides or from currents or from thermal gradients and the such. So I focus on tidal in-stream energy, and you had suitability analytics engine that took not just the device information, but also the site information. So information about the currents, information about the bathymetry, which is the topography underwater, information about the weather, and information about environmental constraints, and all these different layers that would be considerations for a project developer to go into a site. So this site device matching plus different set of criteria, such as the economics, maybe even not just capex and opex, but also different types of socio-political and legal parameters. So these are different criteria that you can represent using data layers. And when you come to intersect and pull together these data layers, it's not such a straightforward or simple decision-making process anymore. And my research focused on looking at the different signals from this data that could then lead a decision maker, depending on a different kind of criteria set that they have, into saying that, yes, that's the site where I want this device that could lead to maybe the best return on investment. So that's one question. Or you could be a technology developer that could look at, hey, I have fixed technology, but I have multiple sites that fit my criteria of being able to deploy into these sites. So as a technology provider, maybe you're looking at markets, right? But if you have just one site and you are the site owner, then it's the other way around. You talk about different technologies that could fit into your site, and maybe hybridizing, different combinations, and say, this might be the lowest investment for me, and then this would probably operate over the 20-year period, and I would get, on annual returns of such and such. So depending on who you're talking to, the tool, which was prototyped during my dissertation, essentially allows for this sets of questions from different stakeholders to be ask of the tool, and that tool would then yield different results depending on sets of parameters. So I was doing a lot of field work, measurements, diving, doing boat-based surveys, and also visiting different technology providers and interviewing different stakeholders and all that. So the mix now of the, should we say, hardcore quantitative work and less sort of softer qualitative work needed to come into an intersection, basically. And I think in the region, in Southeast Asia, that was back then in 2010 to 2012 was pioneering work. And I'm happy to say that when I did my sandwich program with the Energy Research Institute at NTU from 2011 to 2012, there was a group called the Wind and Marine Renewable Group in the Institute that was doing marine renewable energy investigation for Sentosa. And they invited me to come on board to help them do some resource validation, because they probably came from a background that didn't have oceanographic know-how, and the tool was not something that they had access to as well. So when I came in on board, there were just three of us, and that really made me part of a real project where we could look at sites, deploy our own design of a tidal turbine to be, I think it was 3D printed and manufactured. It was small scale, but it was fit for purpose. It was appropriate for the site because none of the other technologies would fit that site. So I didn't even know that the tool could be used for designing technologies. So that was a new application too. And being part of that three-man team, so with a mechanical engineer, a naval architect, and I being an electrical electronics engineer, was sort of very providential, I would say. Very providential because I got to use my skill set into a project that was pioneering in Southeast Asia in a location that had, I think, very high profile, being that it was in Sentosa, and using a tool that I was developing during my PhD. So I guess the innovation there comes in bits and pieces of pulling together different knowledge from different modules of different fields and integrating them into what makes sense, generating useful insights, not just for R&D, but also for potential downstream commercialization of actual projects. And this template, this framework, this blueprint was my main contribution during my dissertation, and maybe for the industry as well. And rolling that out into the form of a spin-off company that could commercialize such innovation, I think that was a really good, maybe great fit for me at that time to look into the contribution, which I spoke about earlier, that could impact, and impact in terms of sustainability, what would be adopted by society. And I'm in the midst of my journey now, getting closer and closer to what could be deployed as a real marine renewable energy power plant, if we may, right, in the region. And ironically, we deployed a pilot tidal energy turbine in Indonesia and another one in Singapore with the demonstration project with both small systems and larger systems. When I say large, it's sort of under 100 kilowatt for those of you guys who know. But yeah, ironically, I have not deployed anything yet in the Philippines, where I'm from and where I got inspired to do all of these things. So I'm now working backwards to sort of bring whatever knowledge and know-how I have from these projects that I've done over the past 5-7 years to essentially then look at a pilot project in the Philippines this year. And hopefully that becomes the start of the scale-up journey as well of my own endeavor and I'm personally looking forward to stepping on the next sets of milestones towards what I have only back then dreamed of, and now I'm taking concrete actions to fulfill. I think I need to give you a little bit more information about what has been going on since my journey in the university or academe started. So being a teaching associate and then going into sort of instructor type of faculty member, we were always encouraged while being in the University of the Philippines, being the laboratory head of the Instrumentation, Robotics, and Control Lab, we were always encouraged to look at technology startups and spinning off, if we can, or commercializing the research work that we were doing, both for our students, undergrad and graduate students, but also for us as advisors or you would say subject matter experts, to look into commercializing things. And we did do that to a certain extent. Some examples include control systems for pyromusicals, fireworks that time themselves for music. So we did microcontroller-based systems, and that went on ahead to be commercialized and sold off to a company, and so that was okay. Biomedical instruments, like pedobarographs or strain gauges that, laboratory-based, these frog experiments that you would have, and then you would have data acquisition systems. So small things like that, as well as data loggers, for instance, right? So we would then go on to thinking about startups, spin-offs, and commercialization journeys for those different research work. So this idea of technopreneurship was not at all alien to me. When I came into Singapore for my research fellowship during my PhD, that sandwich program, and after my PhD, I was invited to stay on and do my research fellowship within the Energy Research Institute at NTU. I already had that mindset of making sure that we're not doing research for research's sake, that we were actually doing it, applied research, we were doing applied research so that it can be downstream utilized by the industry or other stakeholders, right? And the director of the Energy Research Institute, Professor Subod, really inspired us a lot, personally me, because he was basically saying and leading the whole institute, saying that when we do work, when we do research, we are not doing it just because we want to hit certain KPIs inside that institute, but because we know that by doing this, there's either an industry partner or a government agency or a stakeholder that would take this research on and convert that to something scalable, something useful, that it could then massively contribute to the betterment of the world. And I said, wow, that is a very inspiring direction to look at and aspire for. And honestly, I got really energized to look at how my own research area, innovative as it was in that space, could then be transformed to something that could be duplicated, replicated for the benefit of society. The spin-off company, OceanPixel, came in 2014. Back then was merely an idea of how we were going to do that. And it seemed like it was possible to do it with industry partners like DHI, like DNVGL. They were all interested with what we were doing. And we had research collaboration agreements with them. But none of them wanted to do the stuff that we thought would be required to commercialize the innovation that we were doing. So one stormy night, maybe it was rainy as well, in September of 2014, I decided that maybe it was worth a shot. Maybe it was worth looking at spin something off and see where that goes. And I think I personally wanted to to try. Back then, I was sort of near, like around my 30s, and I said maybe if I were to do something, this would be a good time to sort of make mistakes, right? And that's what we did with a number of colleagues as well. There were 5 of us as co-founders, and we started off with OceanPixel, looking at applying intelligence for marine renewable energy. And that innovation required me to not only look at the technical bits, but also the business bits. So there was a real merging of, let's say, R&D skill sets with, let's say, management skill sets. And the metrics we were looking at were not anymore, technical metrics here and there, but it had to be business metrics too. So I never really truly understand technopreneurial mindset, this merging and synergy of the engineering R&D side and also the business side of things, until I became a little more full-time into OceanPixel's work. Because even though I had been exposed to commercialization, that was probably me wearing an R&D hat and sort of translating the research with an industry partner. But now we became not just the middleman for the research and sort of the application. We became the industry partner. So we shifted from doing a lot of the engineering technical bits to doing a lot of the business bits that then relied on what was then licensed IP into the company to grow not just the business, not just the sector, right? The ecosystem around it. So an ecosystem build was very much a facet that I would say went into the change in skill set, as you've mentioned. So dealing with different stakeholders is not as straightforward as dealing with just the R&D stakeholder, right? And dealing with different stakeholders is also not the same as dealing with the business stakeholders only. So that was a real change in my own personal way of working, because it now became not just about, it's just about economics or business profit, not just about technical superiority. It also became about building the team, building the network, hand-holding government stakeholders with capability development milestones. And so it felt like we were a community. And being that community and working together with the different skill sets that we could put in became an approach that was a bit more holistic, inclusive, and integrated. And I would say that's probably one of the best summaries I would have with what changed, from me doing R&D to sort of running OceanPixel as a startup that utilized good technology for a new industry that required a little bit of pushing and pulling. Yeah. So in my own journey, from when I was young all the way to when I became the CEO of OceanPixel, I leverage a lot on my science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM background and mindset. That actually gave the foundation to becoming I would say, a not so mediocre technopreneur. And I think it gives people, even though you're young, or even if you're advanced in years, doesn't really matter, right, where you are. The STEM culture helps you deal with challenges in a way that takes into consideration different parameters, different factors, and it gives you some form of grounding. And that's really important. When you have that kind of grounding, it allows you to have principles in the way that you approach different things. values, even ethics, right? In business, in research, in development, in engineering, in dealing with people, etc. The STEM culture gives you a very good framework and blueprint to progress yourself in aspiring your dreams. Thank you very much.